Yeah, man, I got to sleep in a fire truck last night. It was pretty good.
Oh,
Yeah.
right on, dude.
Totally out of context, but
Yeah, no, that's fine. But so, yeah, you guys got home a little late and you made it home all right in the Bronco?
oh yeah, screeching around the freeway on ramps,
Dude,
the
I
full
heard
360
you
with
guys
the
leave
with the
from here
spool, It's like,
fucking
oh.
all the way on the bridge of the freeway, which is like,
Oh my god.
as the crow flies, like easily a quarter mile away.
The
I
thing
just hear that thing.
the thing is so obnoxious, but it's so awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just you're grinning the whole time you're driving it, and you're just on the freeway. You aren't even like mashing whoops or anything.
I like his little heater that he's got on there.
He's got a heater on there?
Oh
got
yeah,
little,
he's got like at
electric
your
heater.
knees, like right there for the passenger.
It cranks.
Oh,
Dang.
dude, it's awesome. Yeah, I don't know how the back seat was on the way back, but I was
fine.
loving life up front in the passenger seat.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Uh,
That Bronco's come a long way, to say
Dude,
the least.
For sure, for sure.
Good job, Mikey. Good job, Mikey. You're doing things.
But yeah,
it's been a
so
battle.
so welcome to the Bad Lines Good Times podcast, number 5. We're on number 5 now.
All right, getting there.
Yeah, and so we've got our brotato Scott DeCurtis here with us today.
What's up?
Hi.
What's going on?
As he's the focus.
Yeah.
Little focus group right here. You're between two ferns.
Oh
Is
man,
that-
I'm wedged in.
Between
Watch
did you just
out.
call me a fern?
You've seen the Zach Galifianakis? You've never seen
No,
that?
I
what are
know
you
who he
talking
is,
about? I don't
but
know
I
what
don't
you're
know.
talking
He has like a comedy show where he interviews people, and it's between two ferns.
Okay, got
And
it.
it's
Oh,
like
I've
this,
heard of
but
it.
he's
I've
had
heard
like
of it.
Hillary Clinton and stuff on there, and he just
Okay.
talks all this trash.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I've seen like
That's
excerpts
Okay.
of that.
Anyways, it's called Between Two Ferns. I think we could be ferns.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're not a fern.
But yeah, so Scott, obviously a longtime buddy of ours. I've known you for what, like 15 years, something like that.
It's wild. When you
More.
think
I
about
can't
it.
keep track anymore.
Yeah. And so obviously one of our forum members. And so we've got one thing I wanted to bring up about the forum, 1,000 members.
Yeah.
We just hit 1,000 members.
We're at
That's awesome.
1,017 already.
All right.
Dang,
I
dude.
like it.
Yeah, that's this morning we checked. It was 1,017.
It's climbing every day.
Yeah. So that's
Little by little.
That's rad. Thanks guys for following us along and all your contributions. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
But so we've got on the forum, if you're on there you already know, if you're not you probably don't know, but so we have like a couple different segments of the forum, and so we have highlighted trip reports that's called What a Trip. And then that's where you can kind of showcase the off-road adventures with a storyline and photos. And so there's a ton of different trip reports that are on there, and then individual trips we kind of highlight and we'll post them up on the social media. And then also we have
Real quick. I want to say a shout out to Rouse for putting in the work.
Yeah.
He's pulling
Yeah.
stuff back from 6-7 years ago, and
Yeah.
he's just cranking. But thank you for that. I know you're listening, so that's why
It takes
thank you
time.
for
It
this.
takes time to pull that together.
oh dude, totally.
But keep going. Now.
And then the other section that we've got, or kind of we call it the showcase, is the local legends, and so that is build threads, truck build threads, or it could be UTV, golf cart, whatever. But so that's kind of where we parlay Scott in here. So he's got his red 4Runner, and he is a local legend on the forum. And so we're here basically to talk about that beautiful red 4Runner that everyone seems to like so much. So
It's become quite a catch, for everybody. But
It's got a very unique look.
Yeah, it's. I mean, well, that's. I mean, to be honest, that's what I was going for. It's like how many long travel linked 3rd gen 4Runners are out there. Like before mine was built. I mean, I'm sure there was. It's just someone's probably got someone somewhere, but you just don't see them.
it wasn't in your algorithm.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Google wasn't.
But even
listening.
from the fiberglass and everything.
So
yeah.
I mean,
It's
that's what
unique.
makes the truck, obviously. And it was funny before that even got done. It was just like, what am I going to do for the rear end?
Sure.
And we can get into,
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story for sure.
But yes, so we obviously had you on the Thanksgiving podcast, and we kind of did a little bit of a intro, but let's just kind of go back into it. So like, let's take it back. How did you get into this whole pre-runner scene or off-road scene, let's say? Like, what was kind of your start? How did you kind of get to this point?
I mean, I don't know how far we want to dig, but I mean, basically growing up as a kid, my folks coming from the East Coast back in mid 80s or whatever, they like saw the desert in California, and it was like, oh my God, this is awesome open space. And so as a kid, I spent many weekends riding around. I learned on some old school like 100cc Yamaha dirt bike, drive around
Metal
Barstow.
tank.
Yeah, metal tank,
Yeah,
like
I know
super
exactly
old
which bike you're
school.
talking
Like,
about.
yeah, exactly. I mean, so basically saying, I grew up as a kid in the desert, and being Barstow being the mecca that most of us know, there's plenty of times when we were out there as a kid and just watching trucks ripping up and down Barstow, Maine there, or other parts of the race course out there, on the east end of Barstow over /X and whatnot. But, just seeing that growing up, my dad was always a really hands-on guy, like vehicle guy. He was total like muscle car guy in college when he was younger too.
Really?
So he like I think some of that stuff was instilled in me, seeing the desert trucks, people working, creating something, out of their mind to master the desert like that is just that's kind of what made me gravitate towards it.
So
Nice.
you had
know?
like firsthand experience of like, what is that?
Right. Exactly. Like, yeah, I remember being like 8, 9, 10, being out there just like, oh my God, that's so rad.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
My first, this is a really, really funny, unique story of my life. I had an old friend, Spencer. He's passed away now, but we were like real good friends growing up, like best friends. And we were into trucks, and it was always just like 4-wheel drive, like whatever. It's like we were just into having the truck. He had a Ford Ranger, and we were sitting in my house, in my bedroom, and we were looking on the computer, and he was showing me like, he's like, yeah, I want to get fiberglass for the front end and this, that, and the other. And it was this old square body Ford Ranger. I think it was an 89. And as we're talking about his future plans with the truck, because before it was just going out to the fields. I'm from Bakersfield. We'd go out to someone's field and have a bonfire and throw it in full drive and climb up the canal, whatever, and that was like the extent of our off-road use. And literally the truck caught on fire in front of my house. And I don't think it was, I think it was somebody set it on fire.
Oh, really?
We were a little shit. So he was a little bit more so. Like we pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it was fun,
Sounds like it.
I enjoyed doing it.
But all of a sudden we walk outside. My neighbor comes in. He's like, dude, your car's on fire. I'm like, what? We walk outside. And it's like flames like 4 feet over the cab. But anyways, that was the first time I heard of a pre-runner. The word pre-runner was said by my buddy Spencer, and I wish he could be here today with us and all for it. But like that was the first time I ever heard of it. And then like again later on, I met the TNT boys, and they kind of actually exposed me to it. But I thought that was a pretty funny story of the Ford Ranger catching fire in my driveway.
That's one way to be introduced to it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
But you actually had the firsthand experience of seeing what that truck is doing. You know what I mean? I probably saw it on TV maybe once or twice, like some of the short course stuff they were doing back in the day, and like it just doesn't seem attainable. But
yeah,
sure.
No, totally.
But yeah, so you got out of college. You college in what, Hawaii, right?
Yeah, so I spent some time in Hawaii, and which is like a whole nother story regarding the types of trucks and builds that they do out there. I'm sure some of you have seen them, but coming from the desert background and seeing those trucks. I mean, we were talking about it earlier, right?
Yeah.
Just breakfast. It was just like, it was so bizarre to me. Like, what is the meaning behind this? But anyways, every geography has their own build, I guess we'll call it.
Sure.
But went to school in Hawaii for a little bit, came back from college, still had to finish college, but basically I was like, I need to buy a vehicle. I need to like commute, because at that time I was basically transferred to Cal State Northridge.
Mm-hmm.
And was trying to finish out school, but it was like I was like 21, 22 maybe, and I was just like, I got to get to and from the valley, because at that time I was still down in Redondo Beach, actually. So it was, but I just knew like my dad was a Toyota guy. He was always been a Toyota guy. Like I grew up, like the first truck I really drove was an '84 straight axle 4Runner, with the fiberglass cab, just like yours.
Yeah.
So. But I've always been a Toyota guy, so I basically I call myself young and dumb at the time, pretty, somewhat mechanically minded, but I was like, I saw my first 1992 Toyota pickup truck, and it was like gray with all like line X like along the bottom edge of the cab or whatever, and had black wheels back then, so that was
this
the
was
thing,
Fiona.
right? This was
Yeah.
Fiona,
Yeah.
and I was like, I gotta buy it. This is my truck. I don't care how bad it is, right? I was like, I gotta get it. So that was like really kind of what threw me into that era of like, okay, I'm gonna do this pre-runner.
You got a
Mhm.
platform.
So,
now.
yeah, I had a platform essentially to learn from.
And then that was kind of like when we first met you,
Yeah.
in the
Not
DR,
long after.
like back in, that was probably in like 2009 or
Yeah, I
so.
was gonna say 2008,
somewhere in there. And then so you had Fiona, and that thing went through like a total like evolution,
oh my
a
goodness,
metamorphosis, if you will.
over, gosh, at least 10 years, if not more.
Sure. And
I mean, from how many like engine cages did you put in there?
3 at least.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of interesting. I want to point that out because like I'm on my third on the other, the turtle truck.
what's wrong with you guys?
It's we didn't have a Max to help us organize our
Right.
truck.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
You needed a Max.
and I
Everyone
was
needs
You
a
didn't
I
have
was
a fabricator living at my house.
Yeah.
yeah, I was a very smart person, so everything I did, my truck came with an engine cage, and then I built the second one, which I, it worked the entire time somehow, and then my tie just, built another one. But so you had 3 engine cages, maybe 4, and
Maybe
then
4. Yeah.
because then you did a motor swap, so that was probably another one.
That might have been the 4th one.
Okay, so
Yeah.
4th.
There, and then the thing had like 3 different kits on it. It started with a chaos kit.
Yeah, so I
and then
started with like full like on DR, on a budget, scrolling classifieds, found like the first, literally it was probably like one of the first ball joint torsion bar kits to come out of Total Chaos. Like that's how it was, because I'm pretty sure talking to them in later years, it was like, yeah, we've seen that kit. It was like probably one of the first ones to come out of the
Sure.
shop. But anyway, so it was like, yeah, so started with that kit, and geez, 4 renditions later, basically.
Yeah. For the front end.
For the front end, for
Okay.
the front kit.
So then the bed cage and everything. How many bed cages?
I think I only had like, well, so there was more of like a evolving of the engine
So
cage,
it was
or
core
bed cage rather than like redoing.
Okay.
It was kind of just like started and redid. There are probably only 2 overall like complete renditions of that, because most of the time it was like, oh, adding this in and adding that in.
But so this is like the textbook case of like you started, you had no idea what you're doing, didn't know what you wanted or needed, and
Scrolled
then
classifieds or forums,
Sure.
Learned from just experience, guys that were racing, other fab shops, it's kind of some stuff we've touched on before, and
sure.
and just trying to like, gosh, I probably scrolled forums for years just absorbing information, right?
Mhm.
And then I've always been a guy with the mindset of like, if I can do it myself, or if I feel like I can do it myself, I'd rather try
Mhm.
than to pay somebody to do it. There's certain times in which it's important to pay somebody to do something.
We talked
right?
about that
Yeah,
yesterday.
right. So, but so it was a pretty big evolution of that truck, and that was my first truck. I learned how to use an angle grinder. I learned how to weld with that truck. I learned how to, and it's so that truck showed that evolution essentially, like you could, before I ditched or had to get rid of that truck, which we'll probably get into, but, you could see like the first weld I ever did. Right. And I would always look at that weld, but I didn't want to redo it because it's like, that's the first weld, right, I ever did. But then you would see like, okay, wow, look at these welds up here. And so.
But so while you had Fiona, that was like your dedicated off-road truck.
Yeah, it was my DD too, so I drove it daily.
Yeah, but then since I've known you, you had you had another pickup when we first met. That was, I think once Fiona kind of got to a point, you needed a DD.
Fiona, I think as soon as I like caged Fiona, I was like, okay, this is too much to drive around all the time. So
Keep that in mind, young boys. If you want to drive fast and be reckless, cage your truck.
Yeah.
Do that. But if you kind of need it to use,
if you want
You're
the
using
creature
it daily on the road,
there's a thread on the forum right now that Lance, Lance, I think, posted up, and he's like, I need to tie in my cage into the cab cage into the bed cage, and he's like worried about it being loud. It's like, bro, once you have a cage in there, it's gonna be loud anyway. But once you tie it all together, like it's just a whole nother ballgame.
That's you cross the line there.
Yeah.
Which is a perfect rendition to talk about Scott's truck, because you had a Toyota that has box frame, so you're like, I don't need to tie all 3 cages together. Right. So what happened with that when you don't tie cages together?
Yeah, over the years, it showed fatigue, and it was like patching this and patching that and trying to plate the frame and
cracks.
And towards the end of Fiona's life, basically, it got linked, right? Yeah. And I think once the links went in and not having a complete front to back cage solid.
Because it was like 3, it was a bed cage.
Yeah, it was like engine cage, it was a cab cage, and it was a bed cage, essentially. And so it was a lot of stress.
So basically,
and your truck's going faster because the suspension's getting better, and it's just a domino,
What I wanted to bring up though, if on a cage truck like any of ours now, if they're not all tied together, they flex a lot. If anybody's into this off-road space, you'll go watch a video of a Dodge Ram with a Carly kit running down some whoops. You just see that thing all over the place, and they're designed to do that. But when you have when you make something pretty rigid just in the rear, and then rigid in the middle, and then rigid in the front, you're basically condensing those flex points.
You're just making weak points.
Yeah, this is your anyways. So,
but so before we get into the demise of Fiona, let's kind of you had a couple different DDs.
Yeah, so I had my first DD, because Fiona was getting built so much, was God, I think it was like a 87, 88 extra cab Toyota pickup.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, like any of us truck guys, I couldn't leave it stock. No. Right? You can't do that.
What is stock?
Yeah, I don't understand that terminology. So
your Tacoma right here is stock.
No, but it's not.
I know it's stock in our eyes.
And I ended up doing another ball joint kit, that I found on the classifieds or whatever. And then I think I put some upgraded leafs in the back. I don't think it was full sprung under, but it was I think I just did a Chevy 63 swap or something like that, just to get the ride height level. But it was a cool DD, it was total 22 RE automatic. I'm going to putz this thing around town, but it looks cool.
It passed smog, and that's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
But okay, so you had a couple different trucks, but so let's kind of get into the 4Runner. So from my end, we're in Glamis. It's I think I want to say, could it have been 2013?
Yeah, maybe.
So 10 years ago.
So 10-ish years ago, we're sitting in the hot springs near Glamis. No, I'm not going to tell you where they are. Don't even ask. Shh. But so we're sitting in the hot springs, and Scott's like, "Hey, dude, I just got a text from my dad that my sister doesn't want the 4Runner anymore, and I got to go pick it up." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, she's in Colorado." And I was like, "Well, if you need a co-dog, I'm in." And so I just kind of said that off the cuff, and he was like, whatever. We just kind of laughed about it. 2 weeks later, he's like, "Hey, were you serious about wanting to go to
yeah, I think Denver?" At the time when we were at Glamis, it was kind of just all right, I'm texting my dad. He mentions it to me.
Yeah.
Just kind of throws it out there. And then over, I think, a 2-week period, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, it would be kind of rad to have this as a DD.
Yeah.
And so that when I called you, I was like, "Hey, what do you actually think about us doing this bit of a road trip?"
Yeah. So I think I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm in." So I told Kayla, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to go pick up this 4Runner with Scott." And, so Scott, I'm like, "What's the story with this thing?" He's like, "Well, I know that it needs a few things. So basically I think we should bring some like basic tools and like all, bring like spark plugs.
Yeah, I
and-
wanted to do like it needed a little tune up. Like it never had spark plugs, changed wires, like fuel filter. Like we were about to do what, like 8,000 miles, 800 miles or something.
Yeah. So
I was like, okay,
so we
bald tires.
this guy buys me a plane ticket. I think I drove out to your house and we
went from LAX.
Yeah. So we fly into Denver with a Pelican case full of tools. You have to check
Just
it because
random
you
stuff,
can't just like get on with a tool set.
Came down the carousel sounding like broken glass.
Oh yeah,
basically.
dude, that thing was like easily 50 pounds.
Yeah.
But so we get to we get there to Denver, and I remember your sister picks us up in it, and it was and this we need to add that this was in like the dead of winter in Denver. And
yeah, it was January. It was like late January.
Yeah,
I think,
and
right?
she something like that. And so she was in like the Vale Pass area.
Yeah, so she was up in the mountains. Yeah.
So, anyways, we're driving back to her house to drop her off, and I'm like kind of like scoping out the 4Runner. Like obviously, I'm like, this thing seems fine. Like this is gonna be totally chill. Like we just got to drive this thing back. Like it seems to be running fine, and we're on like the open highway, like cruising doing like 65, 70. And so all of a sudden we start to hit ski traffic, and we're sitting now in traffic, and the thing's like sputtering, and I'm like, oh fuck, dude, this is gonna be a good one.
And how cold is it?
It was freezing.
Yeah,
I mean, there's snow on the ground.
That's cold.
Yeah. And so we get to, I'll never forget this. We get into the little mountain town, and she's driving like at this point now they're like the highway was clear, but like her little town was like fully covered in snow, like all the streets. And this is a 2-wheel drive 4Runner, bald ass tires. And so she takes the first turn and like completely drifts it, like total Ken Block. But it was like clean. I was like, oh shit, dude.
She's got this. She's sipping her coffee.
Yeah, she was just like cool as a cucumber. And then she's telling us about this like she's like, yeah, there's this big like puddle in front of the house that we don't know what the deal is with it, but it ended up being a water main that was broken right in front of the driveway. And she just like slams through this thing. Like you have to drive through it to get into the little.
But all the water.
Oh, dude,
literally,
she hit it going mock Jesus.
Just
and I'm like, fuck, we have to drive this thing home. Take it easy.
It's like a 10 by 10 pothole, and it was literally like Elliot and I both glanced at each other like, okay, we might be repairing something on the side of the road now, But yeah, no, it's. I mean, it is a good story.
Yeah,
but I mean, we road tripped that back.
Yeah.
From Colorado. I mean, I think we went through like Moab because we'd never been to Moab.
Yeah.
We wanted to see that.
No. Don't even try to skip over Moab. So we go there. We stay at
Should this be a different thread though? Topic?
I mean,
oh no, we're not getting weird. But I'm going to talk about when we get. So I'm like, dude, I want to go check out the arches because it's like right there. And so. We go check out the arches, and then we go get something to eat. We go to the hotel. It was like a Motel 6 or something. And we come out in the morning, and there's like 3 inches of snow on the ground. And I'm like, oh, bro, there's
bald
3 inches.
Tires.
Bald tires. These things are like
bald.
No.
Yeah.
And 2-wheel drive. And anyways, we end up going. I'm like, dude, I want to check out Delicate Arch because it's. We were when we went before, we were kind of there at night. I did like a couple night shots, but I wanted to check out the Delicate Arch in the day. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, dude, we should just scope it out. And like as we're kind of driving towards the
is that the one that's next to like it has a business next to it or something?
No, it's way down in the park.
Okay,
it's like way down in Arches.
But so we're going out. We're in what is it? Arches National Park. Yeah, we're in Arches National Park, and so there's no one there. It's us. And
it's rare.
This is like, was it midweek? It wasn't. I think it was like a Thursday or Friday.
No, it was like a Friday or Saturday.
Okay.
But it was just. I mean, there was fresh 3 inches of snow on the ground, like middle of
winter.
But
so
no one's
as we're getting into the park, like there was less snow on the ground, like so it wasn't that bad. But there was like certain patches where it was like noticeably worse. And so to get to Arches, like the Delicate Arch, you have to go down this like pretty steep grade. And so I'm telling Scott, and it's like a sketchy, like 2-lane road. And I'm like, hey, bro, like on the way up, like make sure that you stay on it because we got to keep our momentum up.
And if nobody knows who Scott is,
And
he's
so-
not good at
no.
staying on it.
No. And
Very
so,
true.
anyways, check out Arches, whatever. And then we're on our way back, and I'm like, here comes Scott. And so he's cruising, and he's driving.
I'm like, all right, I'm gonna stay in it, Elliot.
So we start to go, and it's completely swapped up the 4Runner, and it goes like cliffside back to the mountainside, and then he ends up saving it, and we're just basically like the whole time, and I'm just like, dude, you almost killed me.
Yeah. And you guys have no friends, no one to get you
There's
out.
no one
nothing.
there, dude. We would have.
we
And you
would've
probably
frozen
brought
it.
all your right hiking gear, your van.
No, we had
not at
nothing.
all. We were wearing what we're wearing now. It's
A
like-
regular
okay.
sweatshirt.
But
Yeah.
so anyway, so we get back, we made it. It was like we replaced a few things along the way, but it wasn't really like it was fairly uneventful for the most part.
So that is the start of the 4Runner build. Is that correct? I mean, as far as like that was a start.
that was
of-
like the acquisition of it, I guess
Okay.
you could say, because it was always like a family 4Runner.
Yeah.
Like my sister had it for a while. She took it to college. That's why she was in Colorado.
That's how my Bronco is. Love it.
Right, and so it was kind of a family acquisition, and it was just like at that time my folks were still living down in Redondo, like not a lot of space, and so basically I was like, I'll take it on.
Yeah.
Like I wanted it as a DD, or something, and so once we got it back, I mean, I basically I put like upper arms and coilovers on it, like what you would typically do.
Just what you're doing with all the other
Yeah.
stuff. Kind of
I
like
put
making it a
33s
cool
on
daily
it.
driver.
Right,
And
yeah.
then like slightly.
And again, it was like another 4-cylinder, like 3RZ and an auto, and it's 2-wheel drive. It's like the perfect DD, and so
let's pause here real quick. We gotta do camera swap and we'll roll it back in.
looking fancy.
It's just I like how it looks.
Nice.
All right, so we're back in action.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, so you got the 4Runner back. We got it back from Denver, and then it became
Evolved into a little bit of a DD, for oh god, a year, 2 year, not very long.
Mhm.
Like I had it for a short stint. I think at some point in there I ended up acquiring like a T100 too. So then it was like I've got too many vehicles kind of thing,
yeah, and then it was kind of a mellow mid travel.
Yeah, I mean, I think I took it to the desert.
Yeah,
for Thanksgiving.
I
trip
remember
one year.
riding-
Yeah, and
I don't
Yeah.
ever remember riding in it. but-
I remember riding in it.
probably only took it to the desert like once.
Yeah.
Out at Thanksgiving. I remember you had the 4Runner there, and then you also
I'm
had
pretty sure I had the T100 and
Fiona, and I
Yeah.
remember you broke something, and I have photos of you grinding on the 4Runner, like it was something with the front suspension.
Probably. I mean, yeah.
I don't know why
The thing
Rain
wasn't
Man
even
remembering
really built.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But then, so as you're DDing it, somebody decided to pull out in front of you.
yeah, I was
and-
like, I think I was.
That's living in LA.
Yeah,
Get out
really.
there.
So I like commute or used to commute up and down the beach, which is great, right? I'm not on the freeway or anything, but it has its drawbacks because you're dealing with like 90% of tourists driving up and down the beach, checking out the surf, which I won't deny I do too, but since it's the route I drive every day, I could drive it blind, But anyway, so some dude must have been checking something out and basically like went for a left turn on a red light. He was like a yield left turn, and I was just like couldn't stop in time. This truck is like the 4Runner. What, it had like 33s or 34s, whatever the metric size was, and stock brakes, and I couldn't brake in time. I was like, so boom, basically like head on collision. I mean, literally like I wouldn't say totaled it, but I mean the front end was done. Yeah, like it had to be put on a flatbed, back to my folks' driveway, and sat there for a while. I mean, because I already had, like I said, another DD, and then it was like they had the driveway space at that time, and so it just kind of sat there. It was like my dad and I, being Toyota guys, were like, yeah, someday we'll put it back together.
You'll
Right?
revive.
Yeah,
Revive
well,
the
yeah. So
legendary 4Runner.
yeah,
But so eventually, after months or however long it was, you
Yeah.
fixed it.
yeah.
and it
So
was
I mean, it
drivable.
probably sat there for at least a good year
Okay.
before even being touched, right? And then at that point, my sister and brother-in-law, who were living up in the Bay Area, Renee was saying that she like kind of needed something to putz around Sausalito area is where they lived, just back to and from work, like a couple miles, and so of course, my mom, being who she is, when she sees something sitting in the same spot for too long, she's like, "You better get this thing out of my vision," So,
Yeah.
so I was like, "Okay," my dad and I are like, "Okay, we'll put it back together." So we literally like piecemealed it together. I mean, the whole front core support was gone. One of the front horn like frame rails was completely bent. So I basically like tweaked and fab worked everything back into place enough to essentially make this thing drivable again.
Mm-hmm.
And it drove all the way back up to the Bay Area.
Got
It was on the road. I mean, it wasn't great. It was obviously still a little hodgepodge, but there are worser cars on the road I've seen.
Sure,
right.
sure.
So it kind of got revived again.
Yeah.
For your
it's
sister to use.
Now
Yeah.
for my sister to use for a couple of years. So that's what I'm saying. Like this thing's been passed around in our family.
That's
know?
right.
Yeah,
It's like,
And then so she drives it for a bit, and then it ends up just kind of going up to.
Yeah, I mean, it started having issues. I mean, being up in the Bay Area, it rains a lot for some reason. Like I think the cab got tweaked somewhere, and water would leak into like the computer or like one of the main fuse boxes, and it was started to become more trouble for her than it was worth. So at that time, my folks had actually moved out of Redondo up north to Garden Valley and bought a bunch of property in the barn. And so it basically became a barn.
Mhm.
Barn vehicle is just
A
kind
barn
of
ornament.
Barn ornament, exactly. It sat in there, So
So then came the barn rescue.
yeah.
Oh,
So
you're one of those guys.
the good part of the story is, it was, it basically, here's my mom again. Like, okay, I've been staring at this thing taking up my barn space for too long.
Well,
right?
was that the actual case, or was Fiona slowly dying?
Well, I mean, I hate to admit it, but yeah, absolutely.
Toyotas,
So
Toyotas don't last
I mean, at
forever,
this
like
point,
Rangers do.
this was like the fourth generation of the front kit.
Yeah.
Full like, gosh, I think the track was like 92 inches at the time or something. So it was just the kits were getting bigger, the truck was getting length, it was getting stressed more, like we had touched on. Still not fully caged front to back, and at that point, it was just like a never-ending patch job, right?
Yeah.
And then I went on.
And one of the problems is you never want to cut, like you did all that work and it's so hard to cut that all part.
Right.
Like you're just like,
and the time at that point, it's like the time to do it too.
Yeah.
Right. It
and to do it right,
valuable,
it's all got to come back off. Like and start literally from scratch.
So Fiona was dying at this point. I had taken it on kind of what ended up being its last like hoorah trip out to, I think was like Overland Expo West out in Flagstaff or something. And, by the end of that trip, got back home, like was under the truck, kind of looking at something. And next thing I know, there's just like the whole back half is falling off. Basically, it's just completely cracked. I don't know how it was holding together still.
No.
But at that point, I was all, a lot of life changes at that point. I was about to have a kid, or we had maybe already had Ryder.
Yeah.
Ryder was probably very young, like 6 months old or something. And so it was just like, it was either at that point, literally chop Fiona in half and rebuild the truck, which had its own kind of, dilemma, because all right, I could do all that work, spend that time, spend that money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But in reality, I would still only have a 2-seater vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And here I am starting
done.
a family, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do? And literally like a few weeks later, that's when my mother, like I said, was like, hey, I want this thing gone. So you better come move it or I'm going to give it away. And I'm like, no, I can't give this thing away.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're like, maybe I should build that.
Yeah.
Mom, I said like, leave it.
Gracious,
it's just,
right?
it's crazy. It's like, we think about, when you first got your truck, like when we first met, like, 15 years ago or whatever, you're not thinking about like, oh, I'm going to need more seats in the future.
Yeah.
And it's like, your 2-seater ends up being, you're like, well, I need more room for the family.
I'm screwed,
like,
right?
In hindsight, it's like build a 4-door, even though you don't need the seats, but
they do fit everything better, obviously.
Yeah.
But like it's kind of funny you say that, because like I built a little seat carrier for a toddler seat, in the back of the new range or whatever you're gonna call it. And like I had so many people hit me up like, "How did you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know, angle iron."
Yeah.
Just drilled some holes,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
but
You get
it's
creative.
just barely big enough. Again, obviously, if your kid gets to where Ryder's age is,
Yeah.
it's not big enough.
Yeah, right.
Like you have to have really small front seats pushed kind of far forward to make room
Right.
for the kid as they age.
Sure.
And so making the 4Runner, which is obviously a much larger package, work for you was obviously it was just there was no.
It would just
choice.
kind of all came together at the right time.
Yeah, and
You
they're
know,
they're
it kinda
similar
all
years,
fell into
right?
place.
Sure.
Well, I guess. Well,
As far as the
so
front end
Fiona,
goes,
Fiona
like,
or the pickup was a 92, and then the 4Runner's a 97.
but the front
So-
end assembly is essentially
Well, so yeah, so and then some of the thought process was like, okay, I could probably take most of what I have already off of Fiona
Mhm.
and then get it on the 4Runner, try and swap over some things. The front kits weren't the same, unfortunately.
But so
But-
you had, if I remember correctly, from the cleanup, didn't you win the cambric housing?
Yeah, so that same, so
Thanks, Clean Desert.
yeah, thanks, Clean Desert.
And
Yeah,
have
thank
have you ever
Yeah,
won
I love
anything
that.
from Clean Desert? I haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
got
never
bumps.
won a grand prize or a prize for that matter worth anything from a raffle ever.
Sure.
And still haven't to this day since then.
course.
You know, of
But
course,
you
right?
were-
That was
you
my
were-
one-time ordeal.
If I remember correctly, you were like mid build on that.
Well,
or
so
starting.
that was like, I think I had literally, to backtrack a little bit, you know, once I figured the 4Runner situation out, I basically brought it down to my house, swapped over the drivetrain from Fiona into the 4Runner because 4Runners came with 3-4.
Yeah,
you know,
motor. And
Yeah,
trans
right.
all.
So swapped as much stuff as I could, and at that time, the plan was to actually send it out to TT Motorsports.
Yeah.
Right.
Tommy Trego.
Which Tommy Trego, and he was in Phoenix at the time, and we had come up with that game plan. So that was like, I want to say it was like late summer, probably August, September-ish or something.
Mhm.
Right. Was the plan, and the plan was at the time to just take the full floater converted T100 rear axle that I had from Fiona, and put it in the 4Runner. But you know, here we are at Clean Desert Cleanup in 19, I think it was, and I freaking won that cambered
Yeah.
rear end. And then at that point, it's
Which
like,
is
okay,
typically in October. Is that when?
Yeah.
We typically do in October. The Clean Desert.
no,
Run?
November. It was always been November.
Is it November?
Yeah.
But so I think it was something like you just sent the truck over there. Tommy had started working on it, and then over Thanksgiving he got into that wreck.
Yeah, Tommy got in a real bad accident.
So he had, so it was out of his shop for, I don't know, a month or two, just because that was like the timing I had to get it out there.
Mhm.
But you know, we knew like, hey, he still had to finish another build he had going on, right?
Yeah.
So he had just finished that build. He literally just had kind of chopped everything off of the 4Runner, and somewhat mocked up the front end kit that he sells,
Mm-hmm.
and that I'm still currently running.
It's a great kit. I've seen it
yeah,
work on other trucks. Obviously, it works on your truck.
I've
but-
got no complaints. Yeah. And literally it was like towers were tacked on, and you know, mock-up bolts were in, right? He was literally just starting to like, okay, cycle this and figure out my shock package, because my shock package is a little different than most people with, like, you know, sway-away coilovers and Fox bypasses, and just the travel lengths are different. So we had to figure it all out. So he was in the middle of all that, and then Thanksgiving hit, and that's when he got in the accident.
Yeah.
And then so the truck kind of
so
sat.
the truck kind of sat for a while, and you know, the last thing
Sure.
at that point when my buddy's in the hospital, like on life alert or whatever you want to call it, you know, the last thing I want to
You've
even
been there a
think
few
about,
times.
yeah, last thing I want to think about is what to do with this 4Runner. So it's out there for a little while, but I think come like this, you know, the holidays or the new year, I think 2020 or something,
We all went.
we all
Yeah.
kind of were like, okay, you know, we got to figure this out, because at that point we were like talking, you know, he was surviving, you know, he was going to survive essentially.
Well, yeah, and it's like,
And it was like, it was a little easier to have those conversations with his wife at the time about picking it up and all that.
Basically, it ended up being kind of a relief valve, probably.
Yeah,
more than
like get it off.
anything.
At that point, it was like, okay, I want to get this off your plate. I don't want you to worry about it. You know, I pay you for what you've done, and excuse me, and just, you know, let you recover from your situation, you know.
So we all fly out. You drove out, I think.
I drove out because I had to do the trailer, and I think
I was already out
you were
there
out there for work.
So I
and
was already.
So Mikey and I flew out.
Yeah,
you
you
two
did.
flew
and
out.
I picked
all-
you guys up.
I picked him up. I picked all of you guys
Oh,
up.
okay.
So we had
I had that big
Fab
forever
Lab,
truck.
we had Wally, Scotty, and myself. We all went out. We visited Tommy in the hospital. I remember we brought him a sweet RC crawler.
Yeah.
So he had something to
Crawling
do.
it all over the hospital room.
But then, you know, we go back to his house, to the shop, and this thing's got no wheels.
Yeah. The rear end was out. The rear end was out, but nothing was cut off yet. So we basically just like, you know,
bolted that back
pin
up.
bolted it back up real quick.
And then we solid axle swapped the front end with the axle backwards.
Yep.
So it was like, it was great.
Well, it was literally just welded the leaf springs. So little bit of a backstory to that. He had just finished that Tacoma before he started working on mine, and he had back half that thing. So he had the rear axle from that Tacoma with the leaf springs still on and everything. Literally, he chopped it off the Tacoma, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we literally we pretty sure we tack welded.
Well, I think Mikey threw some bigger welds on.
Yeah, the leaf springs, literally the leaf spring eyes to the frame just to get this thing.
Yeah, to get it on. Yeah, so we got it as a roller onto the trailer, drove it home.
And we helped clean Tommy's property up a little bit. We were out there doing the Lord's work. You're welcome, Tommy. We were, but it's cool. I say that now because, like, again, Mikey and Tommy, they repaid the favor to me. Like, I needed help getting that Bronco. Like, that thing is not would have sat in my garage for another 4 years probably. Like. And, you know, just everyone goes through different life circumstances, but, you know, it was just cool that we were all able to go and do it and do whatever we could to help, you know, and then obviously helping Scott at the same time because that needed to happen. Like,
right. But so you brought it back to your house, and then was the 3-4 swap already done at that point?
Yeah. So the 3-4 swap was done at that point. You know, obviously I came back with like the whole front kit that he had welded up except for the tower. You know, he had welded up the arms and the spindles already.
Mm-hmm.
But I came back with the front kit and all my parts and stuff like that, you know. So but at that point, I think through those few months before we brought it back, I had won that rear end. So I'd started collecting parts for that to build that rear end essentially, and do a whole floater setup and whatnot. But so brought it back. And then I was like, I think it was just work conditions, having a young kid, my first young child, and
weren't
trying
you
to learn.
Still building your house at the point?
Well, yeah. So my house was like livable, but it wasn't. It was far from complete. So I think I was still like we had moved into the house that October, but still trying to like we didn't even have our building final yet, but we're living there, you know, because it's a owner builder, you know, so it's like so it's still trying to finish that up and life got you know, I had young boy for, you know, trying to figure out how to be a father and be there for them, and which is still a struggle for me, but you know, so it got it back and I'm trying to figure out what to do because it's like I know at this point I unfortunately just don't have the time to put into it. I mean, obviously I have the time, but you know, I don't want to be taking 2-3 years to build this truck, you know? So, basically was just trying to scheme with different ideas. I mean, I talked to a few different guys. I think I talked to Willis and AZ to see if he would take it over. And at the time I kind of knew our buddy Scotty with VPT Racing or whatever
VPT
that I kind of
Imagineering.
sorry, Imagineering now, you're right. That I kind of met through you many years before, but he had moved to Baja now and stuff like that. So just trying to kind of figure out what to do with it. And I was randomly messaging with him about something on Instagram, and we just started talking and, you know, thought, hey, it'd be cool to kind of get this truck down to you. He was looking for something to do. He had just moved down there permanently. So he's like, I kind of need a job or something to keep me motivated. And it turned out to be good timing. So, real quick over the I don't know, month of February or something of 2020, or somewhere like right before COVID hit or something, I just like crammed hard. I basically like did the full front kit install, and then did the full rear end install, like full rear suspension. I did it all. It was a roller, front suspension was basically good. It needed obviously engine cage and stuff, but the shock, everything was 100% on the front end. The rear end obviously needed like rear upper shock mounts and so forth. But I basically like installed it all, made sure the geometry was good enough, and made it into a roller. Put some 2x4s between the frame and the axle, and literally Scott showed up at some point, and we rolled it on his trailer, and I said goodbye to it.
And then it drove all the way to Cabo.
Yeah, all the way down Todos Santos.
Well, it's just north.
Basically,
Cabo,
Cabo.
yeah. And you're like, I hope this works.
You didn't go with him.
No, so I mean, and that was a mission on itself too, because little side story there was it was literally like rushed to get it done right before KOH that year, so then he literally picked it up like the day before we left for KOH.
Oh.
And literally got out to Johnson Valley or Lucerne, wherever we were camping for that week or weekend, and he calls me up. He's like, dude, I can't get across the border with your truck. And it turns out like he needed the title and all this stuff that we just weren't aware of, and he wasn't aware of yet because he hadn't tried to do this yet with somebody else's vehicle.
And Mexico is everything's, there's not laws in my opinion, there's suggestions. I mean, there is laws down there, but everything's kind of a suggestion. So it depends on who you're talking to, how much you want to grease them, and again, like whatever rule that person read. Is what like they're gonna follow, like, but not everyone reads the same rule. It's just goofy.
So I literally went on this crazy like 32-hour tour of Southern California. I literally rushed back home, grabbed my trailer, grabbed the paperwork, went down to the border, met him, gave him the paperwork.
It's like Mexicali
there. Yeah,
too, right?
No, it was
San Isidro.
No, Tecate.
Okay.
And then literally waited there to make sure he would get across again, which turns out he did. So then I rushed all the way back home. Or no, I think I went straight back out to Johnson Valley for KOH. I was like literally did this crazy. Anyways, so that was a little sidebar. But so it went down to Baja for probably a good 6 months. And Scott, the idea of it going down there was just like, I didn't have still building my house. Like my garage wasn't really 100% set up. I didn't have the right tools to be doing a cage or the time. Right. So it went down there with the starting idea of like, okay, here's all the parts. Like the biggest thing was front to back cage and rear upper shock mounts. Like that was the big focus. And then as time went on and we talked, it was like, and being down there, he couldn't, and that was like COVID year. So it's like, he couldn't really come back and forth a lot, very much, with borders being closed and whatnot. So it was just like, he's like, dude, I'll, do your dash. so it evolved into a bunch of other things that helped get the truck a little bit farther along.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott's good. He likes to do that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that was his thing. Yeah. Like, if the surf's not good, he's in his garage working on the trucks, right? If the surf's good, then he's out surfing, which is great. I think that's, living
a good life.
Right. It's a really good life. So he was down there, and then while down there, he started talking to Cabo Customs, which on that side of it ended up doing the new or incorporated like a body shop down there that basically did the fiberglass and the paint. No, the front clip was a McNeil, but we did a lot of modification to it to make it look how it is, just taking out louvers and all that stuff that I didn't want,
Yeah. So that for everyone that's going to ask or has asked already, Cabo Customs.
Yeah.
And it's basically a one-off.
Yeah, it's actually like Fibrous Torres, I believe, on Instagram. Was kind of like the I don't know what you call it.
The middleman.
Yeah, I don't know what you want to call it, subcontractor of Cabo or something like that, whatever you want to call it. But they basically did, a bit of kind of fiberglass tweaking on the front clip to make it fit nice, and then they literally did the custom one-off rear glass, which is obviously probably one of the most iconic things of the truck.
Totally, that rear door is like a foot wide.
Oh yeah,
but
it's good.
How well that door closes is ridiculous.
Yeah. No,
it's ridiculous.
And it was funny because they during that time they were messaging about like how to make the rear latch for the door work, and like, can you do a push button? And I was like, no, I want it stock. Like I want it to look stock essentially. And around and round, and they finally were like, okay, we figured it out, and here we are.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Good, but
So he Scott gets the truck. Basically, was it running, driving when you got it back?
It was not running and driving. Well, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. When I did the drivetrain swap before it went to Tommy, I literally like tested it real quick. Okay, it works, it runs. But at that point, it basically like all the wiring had to be kind of unplugged and removed essentially, just to get all the fab work done. Right.
Sure.
So, you know, and a lot of the incorporated into the engine cage was like, how are we mounting the radiator? How are we mounting the evap canister? How are we doing the intake? Like, so Scott ended up taking on some of that like intricate mounting locations, right?
And the things,
right. And I was like, Scott, I want it to flip forward, you know, like, and so those are the things I added on for him to do, just because it was stuck down there. It was like it can't come back. I'd rather something be done to it.
And how did you? What made you like the flip forward hood? That's rad. What made you want to do that?
I mean, I can't quite remember. I'm sure it's probably because I saw something on Instagram per se, or the forums or something like that. But one of the things about my kind of where I live is like I don't have space. Right? There's no space. I literally have enough space to park my truck in the garage and have my shop tools and my workbench in there. Right? And one thing with Fiona, learning from Fiona, was just like anytime I really had to do any work on the engine, it was literally like take the front fenders off, take the hood off, like unbolt it and all this stuff.
Put that stuff somewhere.
And I got to put that stuff somewhere, and like I got nowhere to put it. So then it was basically like, okay, I like the front clip idea, but it would be nice if I could do it myself or not have to remove it myself. Right. So then,
and it's essentially all out of the way.
So
right. So then I basically evolved into like, okay, what if we make it flip forward?
Yeah.
You know?
That's rad. So you like took something that was a problem from working on other vehicles, and you're like, how can I
lessons learned?
How can I adapt this to my new vehicle that I'm building?
Yeah.
That's pretty smart. I like that.
So
that Scott did, you know, a lot of extra finish work than was planned, which is every fab shop. Thank you, Michael.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We touched a little bit on that, right?
But so then it was essentially like, you know, he did a lot of work. It was pretty close to being done, but not so.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly running driving,
but it was
like
close.
Shocks mount, all you know, 2 shocks on each corner now. You know, better rolling vehicle, obviously, but it was close. Like the interior was completely torn apart. So I think he mounted the dash for me.
Yeah. So then it came back here.
Yeah. So then once
up.
the body and fiberglass got painted and done, he finally brought it back. Let's say October-ish of 2020.
Okay.
And so once dropped it off at my house, and
you're just like,
I'm like all teary-eyed, like, oh my god, this thing is awesome, it's red, I've always wanted a red truck, like, oh, it was great, you know. And I hope he got just as much joy out of seeing the smile on my face from what he had accomplished for me.
He's not an emotional guy, but
right?
It's in there.
Yeah, I know. But it was really cool to have it show up on the trailer one day. At my house, but you know, essentially at that time, I basically parked it in. I had to do a lot of finish work, you know, and my whole goal at that point was like, I want to drive this thing, right? Yeah. So it was like every day, every hour, every 30 minutes, spare minutes, it was wiring and finish, you know, odd finish plumbing and just literally my goal was like, okay, Thanksgiving is coming up quick because that's usually when we go out, you know, and our first big trip of the year, and I was like, I want to, you know, take this thing out. So it was like it was kind of a thrash fest to get the thing running and driving, but basically, you know, took it out for a first kind of whirl, you could call it, out in Barstow.
Well, let's stop right there because we do have a camera issue again, and time's about us ready for that to flip over. So
nice.
We'll get back. Sound guy is not.
The sound guy.
He's actually getting fired.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're the sound guy. Sorry.
The invisible videographer.
The camera guy is getting fired. He can't keep these things running properly, and they cut off every 29 and 59 seconds. It's always something. But so we were just finishing up with the Scott gets it home. He's teary-eyed.
Yeah, no, totally. And so it just it was, like I said, it was a thrash fest. It's like, I want to drive this thing.
Did you give other Scott a hug?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me?
He doesn't.
We
like
had a little
hugs.
moment.
He doesn't like hugs.
I honestly I don't even remember, but no, it was a good feeling. I was stoked. Essentially like the thing's a dream truck
Of course.
of mine, right? It's like I could never imagine me ever having that. Like even when I first sent it down to Baja and had an idea of what was going to get done, like I had no clue what I was going to do about fiberglass. I had no clue about, honestly, like at that point, I was like, I don't need rear glass. I'm just going to make it look funny, but it's going to work great, or which is
That was like
kind of a stupid theory, but right.
But I will say, and we're gonna probably do a quick pause on this, and there is a video I have when both you and Elliot running next on the freeway in Barstow. It's kind of the famous spot, and it's like the coolest your truck has probably ever looked on camera.
Yeah,
it's like that little section, and it's like in slow mo, and it just looks like it's a dream truck.
Yeah,
it's just like,
I think so.
Yeah,
for sure.
Who did the video editing on that one?
Come on, dog.
Yours truly. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah, every once in a while I can pull it together.
But yeah. So Thrash Fest got it together, and I was like, I want to get it out for Thanksgiving because we're always going out. So just last minute, just a quick overnighter to Barstow, literally on like the Friday after Thanksgiving, and just took it for a rip out to like /X and back. Was having like battery charging issues, and I think I had one of the sway bar links break off, and just it's like literally the thing wasn't done, but it could be driven, kind of thing. So it's what I get.
Wait, you had a sway bar link break off?
Well, the tab broke off.
Was it just?
Well, it was still single shear. It just didn't have. Yeah, it was just stupid things like that where it's like, okay, I could go drive the truck, but really, is it done? No. So, but it was like it got that bug out, so then I could like park it in the garage again and be like, okay, what needs to be done here? Like how I need to, rework some things and make it more reliable, more solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it went through a little bit of period of time of like getting
that was we'll call that you went testing. Testing's not a trip. That was testing.
Yeah, so first test run. So but so over the next couple months, just getting the bugs out, finalizing things, shock tuning still needed to be done, all that stuff. So the first real trip I'd say was probably like that March of 21. I think it was like late March. Brother-in-law and sister and I went way up into northern Nevada to like the Idaho, Oregon, Nevada, like tri-state marker situation. Bumfuck nowhere. Like scary, like how nowhere it is. Yeah. And it was a sludge fest in regards to like, it was end of March. It was still wintertime. It was a mud fest. It was like the truck was unpainted, like just
the chassis, all the
chassis
suspension,
was
metal,
undone. It was the worst thing I could have done to the truck in reality. But the coolest trip, one of the coolest trips ever. So
it was definitely one of the best things you could have done.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It made up
for it.
Tools. Yeah. So the whole time I'm crying because the chassis is just rusting, but I'm smiling because the trip is so awesome.
We've got the video evidence of you just pussyfooting it through a water crossing and getting stuck.
Those blackmail clips pop up every once in a while by I don't know who, but yeah.
No, that's so cool. I mean, so then you've got that truck. It's been basically your whole life in the making. Your whole adult life, because like Fiona had countless trips on her. I mean, how many do you think? Like 100?
At least, yeah.
I mean, which is a lot when you think about the season. You maybe you're doing twice a month when you were like in your prime,
right?
Like 100 to 200 trips on a truck is
the good days, man. You make me remember the good days.
I'm trying to get back.
You want to go to the desert this weekend? Sure.
Yes.
My record was 5 weekends in a row.
Really?
Dude.
I remember like right after the Grand Canyon trip, me, you, and Jesse went back out. We're like, gotta go.
Yeah.
Oh, good times.
Can't stop, won't stop.
Yeah.
But so you have taken it out on a couple trips at this point, and then you had to, didn't you have to pull it all apart after that Idaho trip?
So I think after basically that summer, that's when it really needed it needed to be like let's call it completed, I guess. I mean, no truck is ever completed, but it needed to be fully torn down. Like suspension needed to be pulled off, like full rear end. Like, okay, is this floater working? Because I basically did the whole floater setup myself, like custom rear hubs and stuff. And like, okay, are bearings being eaten up right now? Are they good? So it basically got a full tear down. The full steel it paint job as best as I could, without pulling the engine out. So just basically went through it, and did that whole shebang that should have been done from day one. Right. But it was like, I want to drive the truck. Right. So
it's almost better to do it that way. Cause now cause you do all that stuff day one. Like, what do you,
right.
you're not going to know.
Right. You get the bugs out, and then at this point I had gotten shock tuning done. So
I was going to say that was in my opinion, one of the best things. Like you've got this truck. It looks beautiful. It's got all the right parts on it. Not to be rude, but some people that knew exactly what they're doing were putting it together. Tommy, building the right kit. You're not cobbling something together.
Right.
Scott is very patient and puts things together very
capable,
clean.
mindful.
He's very capable.
Yeah.
And he's just good at what he does. He's good at prepping and stuff like that. And then you go and drive the truck a little bit, and then you're like, oh, I got to put this thing back together and make it as good as the outside looks.
Right.
Like everywhere else.
Functionality of it.
And then functionality, and it's like the best thing you could have done is got the suspension tuned.
Yeah, I mean, I told myself from day one, because how many times have we seen a new truck build and the owner just goes out there and is like, oh, I can mob this thing, and next thing you know, he's on his lid, right? Just because of something simple like shock tuning.
No, 100%.
And it, we say simple. It's obviously a science. It takes the right person to do it. I mean, we all dabble. I mean, I dabble in shock tuning stuff, but I know
we're not out there swapping springs.
Right.
So like spring rate is one of the biggest
that was
things
one of the things from day one was like, I've just put all this time, effort, money, people's time, effort, into this thing to make the truck what it is. Like the last thing I want to do is go out there and end up on my lid.
Yeah.
Because it's something as simple as getting, paying for a guy to put in the time to make the vehicle work the way it was designed.
Yeah. And the best part about the trucks and stuff, like there's always an evolution of shock tuning as well.
Yeah,
like you can always adjust something later, and like
it can always be better.
Yeah.
Always
be better. So like it's just cool that you did that. And Carl, he had the truck for like a week down in Glamis.
No, not a week. But so I think evolving into another trip, basically, I like literally went down to Glamis. Carl's an old friend of all of us. We've known him from Ventura days, right? I met him through
Shock Talk, by the way.
Yeah,
Carl.
Shock Talk. Yeah. I had met him through like the GFO guys and all that stuff. But took it down there, took it down to Glamis because he basically was stationed down there now. So we literally spent a full day, and that's all I really had because I literally drove down to Glamis for one of our random trips. But I had another trip planned that following weekend, so I literally took a week off of work, drove to Glamis, and literally spent a whole day shock tuning with him. He basically did, spring swaps and valving on the coilovers, which is a big part. A lot of people think you can just touch a bypass without touching the coilover, and honestly, I think it's important to start like he did with the coil rates and the valving and the coilovers. Anyway, so spent like a full day, literally 8 a.m. to God, it must have been like 9 p.m. Like, I don't even think I hung out with any of you guys because I was busy.
I showed up the next day, and then you're like, yeah.
That next day, I literally had to wake up at 5 a.m. and start driving north for like a trip I was going on, a road trip up to my folks' place. So I want to go back to Carl. I want to get, he did a few turns on like the bypass tubes, but I want to go back. It needs more. Yeah. Like, you see the video.
Well, now you've packed more stuff in the back.
Right.
Now you're like, hey, I'm going to have a kid in the back. How much does my kid weigh? Like, okay, let's add 60 pounds sack of potatoes.
The truck does awesome because I know the current limitations of the valving, like I'm not going to go huck my truck right now, or I try not to. There's some jumps where the valving turns out to be great for this type of jump, but at the same time, it's, it needs more.
What I've always said, just build the truck you want. And what you want to do with it. If you like sending it big, you better set it up for that. It's probably going to be pretty uncomfortable in the wood.
The biggest thing was like, Fiona was great. It was a learning truck, right? I will never forget it, right? Matter of fact, we never touched on the fact that it did get chopped up and it's probably a cube of metal in China somewhere, but because of the mentality of like, if I can't have this truck,
microphone.
Yeah, if I can't have this truck, no one can.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of my thought process.
I
But
will
anyways,
say back to the Fiona. I think it was the first trip you had it out with Linked. Is the Reno trip? Was it not?
it may have been.
I think so.
Oh,
And
that's right.
We got up there,
Yeah.
and then there was a spot. There was a whip section. Somebody on the
Right
radio.
to start the trail.
Yeah, they're like go, and we were with a bunch of Raptor dudes because it was the XO guys, and I was like, Scott, go, and he's like, he listened this time for once in his life, and we were getting on top. We were at the front end; it was on top of the whoops, and the back end was just sitting there, just taking it in. I was like, yes.
Yeah. We're blasting by the like 60K Raptors or 90K Raptors, you know.
And it was badass because like again, it was just one of those times where you're like, it's working good, and like you're like I could see in your face you couldn't believe how well the thing was working. And the 4Runner, I'm sure the second you got it,
yeah. So what I was getting at was like, you know, Fiona was great, but like I could barely get through a day where I was like, I've had enough driving. Yeah. Like I can't drive anymore. And
so
literally,
you're so old, buddy.
Dating myself, but then literally, like after doing the first kind of full day trip in Fiona in the dirt, and getting to the end of the day, and like thinking like, wow, I could go more. Yeah. Let's keep going.
We're gonna point. This is a luxury pre-runner. No, it's got air conditioning.
No,
you really don't have to wear a headset. It's not that loud.
It's far from a. Don't call it a luxury.
It's got.
You're too modest.
No. What's the handle? What's on the handle?
It's got like a tennis
leather grip.
Tennis
leather grip.
It's a tennis
leather grip for the handle to get
bicycle handle leather grip, not tennis.
It's a luxury pre. And we were talking to an old man this morning at breakfast, and I guarantee that truck's gonna have heated seats soon, and it's probably gonna have a heated steering wheel. Yeah.
Those are on the upgrade list, by the way. They are.
He's like, it's just too cold. My fingers hurt. You know, the bones. It gets. I don't know. But yes,
no, the AC and the heat were one of the first things to get put back in.
Yeah, which I'm going the full opposite. I'm hoping the Bronco has everything working. It's been a while. That's the goal, is to have like the pre-lander, something that is is luxurious as far as it just has things, all those things. And my other truck, I'm like, get rid of everything. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to know about it. I just want this thing to go that direction. I want to be able to lock the knee and just go. Yeah, sure. That's the hope and dream. But.
Sure. But so I think what we could probably have a whole nother episode on this truck, but I think we should probably try to do like a walk around or something with this. So, you know, obviously everybody can see it. You just did recently a Terror Crew video on it. So the Built to Destroy,
which was kind of a quick nonchalant with Black Hat, because we kind of ran into each other out in the desert at KOH one year. So but no, that would be cool. Yeah, to kind of get together and do something like that.
And even like, you know, while we're probably not going to have any time in the near future to get one of those going until we get out to the desert again. But we can maybe like in the video, this video, we can link that video so you guys can scope out and see, you know, what this vessel we're talking about.
We have a lot of content. I'm going to try and put it back on here on the green screen, but it's definitely a cool truck, and you know, it's unique. It's not a cookie cutter, you know, 4.0 bypass, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. It's a truck built from 15 years, 13 years of experience, for exactly what you wanted. And he basically wanted a lazy boy, and he built one.
Yeah,
pretty much. Right.
Well, and it's so cool that, you know, you open the back hatch, and it's like, he's got his drive shaft bolted up there. I think you've got like an alternator back there. There's like, everything's kind of got its little spot, and then you've got the slide out drawer.
Yeah. I've got like a spare tire slide out so I can get to jack and impact and all that stuff, and up top's like a rack for, you know, cooler and goods. And
it's just cool that it's like all so well thought out that, you know, if you rewind back to Fiona, it's like
piled on top of each other, and this one is like, okay, I take all that knowledge, right?
Exactly.
And try and showcase it.
You know, and I mean, no disrespect, but like Fiona was like totally hodgepodge together. It
Oh,
was
it
like
was.
multiple
Totally.
projects
Yeah.
over the years, like a lot of our vehicles are. It's like, things are an afterthought, like, oh, that'd be cool if I did this. And,
Right.
you're welding this on there or grinding this on there. And it's like seeing the evolution of what you had with Fiona to now this 4Runner that's like just super clean. It's like you couldn't have gotten to where you are on the 4Runner
Without Fiona.
Yeah.
And I was going to say with that, like, if anyone's listening, like, don't think you have to jump to what Scott's 4Runner is. Again, he built that because of his experience.
Right.
Like, go do what he did with Fiona first, especially if it's your first truck. Like,
I honestly,
try things.
I don't think I could have ended up where I am without those years.
I mean, you could end up with, hey, fab shop guy, I want that truck right there. Like, you just point at something else, and you don't actually know if that's what you actually want.
Right.
But like, what exactly you wanted out of this because you tried so many different variations of your other truck.
Yep.
And like, I want, my iPad mount to be here. I want this, that, and the other. Like, you want things a certain way because of experience. So don't and embrace that. Like, know that like your first truck's not your last truck, and if it is, it's not your last rendition of that truck.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think there's something to be said about like no matter how nice your truck is, it doesn't necessarily make your experience better when you're out in the desert. It's like, we should probably do another episode about this, but it's like, what's the best kind of truck? Is it, a fully built luxury pre-runner? Is it a shit box? Is it a stock truck? The answer is the one that's in the dirt.
Yeah.
Because if it's on jack stands and it's super beautiful with, King Kong, this, that, the other, but it doesn't move, it doesn't matter. Versus, somebody's stock Tacoma, like
that's getting out there.
There's that one dude, I think he's up in Canada, but he did like a full trip through Moab running a bunch of hard trails. And it's like, if you look at the truck, it's a single cab Tacoma, 4-wheel drive, doesn't even have rock sliders. And he's just having the time of his life. Like, I'm pretty sure the dude, I can't remember the name, but it's like, that's what I'm talking about. It's going out with whatever vehicle it is. And, obviously you learn and end up to have something that's nicer, but it doesn't need to
or you don't.
Yeah,
that's exactly what you have. You just continue buying shit boxes.
Exactly.
This guy. Yeah. And you're having fun. Like, I've had so much fun this year, and it's just epic. And I would say the same for anyone, just like we're saying, like, build what you want. And I can't say that enough, because I just see, coming from a guy that's always listening to other people telling me what they're doing. And I'm like, is that what you want? Like, it doesn't sound like that's you. There's a lot of extra work behind that, but we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Thank you, Scott, for
thanks for having me.
Yeah, for giving us the history, your thought process, and
there's a build thread on the forum.
Oh yeah,
and
I try my best to keep it going to information.
Yeah, but you got a couple kids now, so
yeah,
time is precious these days. But we're stoked. We're gonna keep these things going. Obviously, if anybody here, especially guys on the forum, we're going to put you guys first. If any of you guys on the forum want to come here and sit with us and talk about your build and how you got to where you're at, like, we're just a click away.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, let us know. And then, like I said, we want to end up doing, kind of a walk around of the vehicle, and then also show, the vehicle actually working in the desert, because that's the most important part.
Yeah,
totally.
So,
right on, dude.
Cool. All right. Thanks, dudes.
Let's go. We got stuff to do today.